I'll call this work session for the City of Salem for Tuesday, February 21st, 2023 to order. If the recorder will please call the roll.
Counselor Stapleton, here. Counselor Nishioka.
Present.
Counselor Phillips.
Here.
Counselor Gwen.
Here.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Here.
Counselor Hoyt.
Aye.
Counselor. It's all right. Counselor Nordike.
Aye and here.
Counselor Barney.
Counselor Barney, are you still there? Looks like we dropped her momentarily. Oh, here she is.
Okay. All right. And Mayor Hoyt.
I am here.
Thank you.
Counselor Stapleton, do we have a motion for approval of the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda. A second. Thank you.
Any discussion? The recorder will please call the roll.
Counselor Stapleton.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Phillips.
Aye.
Counselor Gwen.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez. Counselor Hoyt.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike. Aye. Counselor Barney.
Aye.
Aye. Did I skip over the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yep.
I apologize. We'll back up for just one moment and do that. I just realized. Sorry about that. With framing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and again, my apologies for walking right past that one. Councilor Stapleton, any additions or deletions?
Aye.
All right. So we are here tonight to talk about revenue options to sustain city services. I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Staley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of brief observations or a few brief observations before we get started this evening. This is another critical point in our budget development process. Obviously, it's still very early, but Josh and I have already started discussions with the leadership team about budget development. So we are into that work right now. And I just wanted to give you some thoughts and perspectives on where we are and the feedback that I need from you both this evening and going forward, and some understandings from my perspective in having to develop the budget. So first off, none of this is easy. With the limits that have been posed by the various initiatives over time, our options are very limited. Expenses must be balanced by revenues. We all understand that, just like our own personal checkbooks. We can't spend more than we bring in. We are fortunate right now to have operating reserves today. That will not be the case if we stay on our current trajectory. There will be hard choices and there are no perfect solutions. Unfortunately, the options available to us are not equitable or easy. City services are driven by people and the people that we employ. How many of them we have and how much we pay them directly impacts the quality and the level of service that we're able to provide. We've come to understand that while providing staffing for police and fire are critical to delivering basic services, so are people in HR, IT, legal, finance, and other enterprise services to support them. One of the difficulties that we're having in filling our police vacancies is simply the HR system being there to accommodate that process, those processes. Cutting services will mean cutting people. That also means continuing erosion of basic services. The baseline budget concept that Josh is going to be talking about this evening, that will be considering this evening, will help prevent that continuing erosion. I consider parks, recreation, safe streets, a thriving downtown, effective code enforcement, and other services to be part of our core services. The budget that I will present to you in April will take all of this into consideration. I look forward to your input and your feedback this evening and hearing where you want us to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Staley. Mr. Eggleston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Share my screen.
And if counselors who are online wish to be recognized, please just probably you'll need to speak up. It'll be very difficult to see you otherwise.
Just to start out, we'll be doing a combination of me presenting and then also Tommy Hoffman and Colleen with Moss Adams. Kind of go back and forth a little bit. Can you hear me?
Josh, could you get a little closer to the microphone, please?
I can try.
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, so three main things we're looking for direction from City Council on. One is a service level target. As the city manager just said, we're going to be talking about a baseline target as well as some other options. And that's just basically the level of service. Right now, we're in a deficit. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So we need to fill that gap. Plus, if you'd like to do anything additionally. The second thing are actual revenue options. The finance committee had a robust discussions a couple weeks ago regarding those options, and we'd like to bring those to you also. And then through the process, what the city council would like for community engagement as we have this conversation. The service level target, so the current staffing, addressing the development deficit, continuing sheltering program, baseline staffing increases. I'll be covering those a little bit more in depth, and then service enhancements. This first one, you're familiar with our 5-year forecast that we just presented back in January. Our expenses continue to outpace revenue. We're anticipating a structural imbalance of more than 15 million by fiscal year 2028. So that's our expenses to keep the current staffing that we have. It's expected to be 15 million more than the revenues we're bringing in. That's property taxes, franchise fees, city operation fee. So we would need 15 million more just to maintain the current staffing. Just to put a point to it, it's not optional. The city is required to adopt the balanced budget, and without correction, we wouldn't be able to adopt the budget for fiscal year 2026. So either we have to solve it with increased revenues or decrease expenditures. As part of this conversation, we'd like to talk about continuing the sheltering programs, the one-time funding for current shelter sites, the SOS team, and filling our debate after fiscal year 2024, and then the one-time funding for navigation center debate after fiscal year 2025. And the annual cost of those programs, once one-time funding completed, is 9.6 million. There may be other one-time funding available, but we don't currently have those in the bank accounts. We're not counting on them until we actually have them. So that could alter the perspective going forward, but right now we're anticipating the funding will last through 24 and 25. You heard city manager talk about a baseline increase. This is a concept that we would increase general fund staffing at the same rate as population growth. Currently, the PSU projection is 1.05% for Salem each year. I think that's a fairly conservative estimate. You might see more than that. What that equates to is about 8 positions each year in the general fund. So I've modeled adding eight positions additionally each year and like what that does in the general fund, and then maintaining our current ratio of about 3 to 1 for community-facing services versus internal staff. We had that conversation with the budget committee. At the current rates, we at least like to keep it at the same rate. 3-1 ratio. And just to point to a visual for it, sorry, the covering up. So on the right axis in black is employees per thousand of population, and in orange is the employee count. As you can see with the baseline increase, what we do is we stabilize. We plateau at this about 4.2 employees in the general fund per thousand of population in Salem, as opposed to the kind of pretty volatile picture and the downward trend that we've seen the last couple of days. For service enhancements, we presented a couple times a deferred needs analysis or staffing analysis. I thought deferred needs analysis is not a very cool name. But regardless, it's analysis by department of needs that have accrued over the last couple of decades. Back in the late 90s, went through 5 and 53 a cap on the revenue increases. And in order to meet that declining revenue. The city has not added staffing like it did prior to those measures going into place. What this phased-in approach would do is over the 10 years get to meet that deferred needs analysis. So you've heard the police chief talk about 60 officers, you've heard the fire chief talk about 5 or 10 fire stations, and so on for each department. What this would do is get us there by the year 10, phased in over time.
I'm sorry, by the year what?
By year 10, 2033.
Okay, thank you.
And just that same visual, so the orange line, the employee count, you can see the increasing over that 10-year period, and the corresponding increase to the employees per thousand. I will point out this green line, just a trend line. If you were to grow the employees like we did in the late 90s, early 2000s, this is about where we would be without this gap in the middle. And also, if you see a high point of the employees per thousand, we're just about even at the end of that 10 years. So about, if you were to say service level equates to employees per thousand, we get back to where we were in 2001 by 2033.
Question?
Yeah, Councilor Nordick.
Thank you, Councilor Nordick here. When I first joined council, it was 2019. It was pre-pandemic, and it was before the 2020 census as well. And at the time, staff were projecting a population growth of about 60,000 people by the year 2035. Now that we're after the year 2020, our staff still predicting that roughly 60,000 additional folks by 2035.
Really good question. The 1% growth included here is very conservative. It could definitely be more than that. But again, we want to have some reasonable level of increase. We could see increases at more than 1%. There's different data sources. That one in particular, I'm trying to think. Kristen, are you aware of that projection, where that one came from?
I'm not.
We can get back to you on that.
If it were to increase by just over 1% per year, how many additional folks would we be looking at under that estimate by 2035?
Sure. So 1% is about 8 per year. So if you were to see a 2% growth,
Population she's asking you about.
Yeah. How many more? Yeah, I'm just wondering how many more people would that be approximately by the year 2035?
Gotcha. I don't have that math. I'm sure someone can do it over at that table.
No problem. Sounds great. Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to turn over to Los Adams, talk about internal service benchmark analysis. You might have seen pieces of that, but we want to make sure we have any more reference.
Thanks, Josh. Hey, everybody, my name is Tommy Conkling. I'm from Los Adams. I'm going to be presenting with my colleague Colleen a couple of times this evening. First, I'm going to briefly touch upon our internal services benchmarking work. And we discussed this, part of this, last month at the budget committee meeting. Internal services are functions within the city of Salem government that, as you can imagine by the name, serve other parts of the government, including human resources, information technology, and facilities. A good way to think about these services is like the engine of a car. They keep the government moving, but you don't really see them from the outside. And like an engine, these services require upkeep. So with the city, from November to about January, we did some internal services benchmarking with 8 peer cities. We benchmarked Salem's internal service functions with 8 full service peer cities. These cities were all in the West. They're all similarly sized, and they provide almost identical services as Salem. And we wanted to do so to try to have the benchmark cities match as close as possible with Salem. Together with the city, we analyzed the internal services of these peer cities, and we compared them to Salem. For peer city internal services, we analyzed how much staffing these functions have, how much they spend on operations, and then how much they invest in capacity, which is a measure that combines both staffing with outsourcing. There were 3 main headlines from this benchmarking work.
I'm sorry, could you move the little window up there so we
Yeah.
could see the?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
First, almost all internal service functions in Salem are understaffed compared to peers. Internal service functions that are understaffed have an average of 75% less staffing than peer cities. Second, almost all internal service functions in Salem are underfunded compared to peers. For the internal service functions that we were able to obtain funding data for, on average, Salem functions have 87% less funding than peer cities. And then finally, when examining staffing and outsourcing, combining them into a measure that is just how much manpower does each internal service department have available, combining the staffing and outsourcing, these functions, Salem's internal service functions have 78% less capacity or manpower compared to peer cities. For our discussion tonight, and to close out this part of our presentation, here are some more detailed results of our benchmarking work that may be important for our discussion today. The table here shows how peer city internal services compared to Salem's own internal service expenditures for the most recent fiscal year. As you can see, in each of these 6 functions, Salem has notably fewer expenses than peer cities. And while government performance is not simply a function of money, it does show that Salem invests significantly less in these internal services than peer cities. Returning to the car engine metaphor, Salem has been deferring internal service needs or engine maintenance for some time. You can defer this upkeep for a while, and you can get by, but eventually deferring this upkeep starts to negatively affect performance. And in thinking about addressing these internal service needs, back to the framework that Josh presented before, addressing these would go under the service enhancements, service level target that Josh was talking about. Yes.
For city manager, that what you mean to say there is that our peer cities spend 126% more on average.
Yes.
Does that include the 2 deputy city manager positions that we're bringing on board here at the city of Salem?
I don't believe so. This was done with data from the fiscal year, the previous fiscal year, so it wouldn't include the future ones. Great question. With that, I'll turn it back to Josh.
Just want to open up for any questions and discussion. We touched a little bit more on the internal service benchmark, and I think you all are familiar with the external service need also. You probably are more familiar with the external service need for public safety, code enforcement, parks and recreation. That's rolled into that defense analysis. Like in Tommy's metaphor, the outside of the car is looking not great either.
Any questions on this part of the conversation?
Can you give us some more examples of what internal service functions include? What are more of these engine parts that are not visible to the public?
Yeah, sure. So, from Tommy's slide right up here, the city manager's office, facilities, so the custodial, maintenance, HVAC, finance, accounting, reporting, grant reporting, human resources. You heard a little bit about the recruitment piece, information technology, and then the legal department.
And just to follow up, I see finance, we're trailing the furthest behind. Is that because we don't have a city auditor, or we just don't have, I know there are types of staff we could have to beef up our finance department, but I'm just wondering if the fact that we don't have an auditor like some comparable cities is part of that.
I wouldn't say so, but I'll defer to Colleen if you want to address that.
Yeah, the auditor is typically an independent office and not part of the finance function anyway, so that wouldn't be counted there. It would be a separate analysis.
Yeah, and just full disclosure, I think 162% is high. I think we have a little bit more decentralized model here. Each department has a budget analyst embedded in their department. So I think it would bring it down more in line with the 75% that you see for kind of the average.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Walking through revenue options, feel free to stop and ask questions as we go through these. We did present these to the finance committee, so they got a little bit of a preview. And just to be clear, the finance committee added a recommendation to explore other revenue options for the transportation services fund. But we'd still like to talk about the gas tax, since it was a recommendation from the revenue task force.
And Josh, you're gonna remind us what SSRTF stands for.
The Sustainable Services Revenue Task Force back in 2018. It was a recommendation from the budget committee, and then the city council formed it. It was an 18-member committee that met several times and looked at many different revenue options. You have a summary in your packet. Thank you. Increase in the operations fee. You might or might not be familiar with this. It's widely used in Oregon. Basically what it means is it's a fee on your utility bill. So it's a mechanism that's widely used. We use it for two items, the city operations fee and the streetlight fee. The structure we recommend is the same as the current city operations fee. If you were to increase it, there has been some consideration of altering that structure, just due to some system limitations. The commercial rate, industrial, institutional rate for the city operations fee is the same, and it's set at 4.82 times the residential rate, the same as the streetlight fee. It's kind of, I would say, it was grandfathered in with that rate. Right now, we have a system limitation that we're only able to apply to accounts, so we can't differentiate between a large commercial, small commercial. So, say a coffee shop is paying the same amount as a Walmart or a Costco at this point. So it's something that the city council could look at next year, or implement a new utility billing system, and have more options to look at as far as that rate structure. But right now, we're fairly limited by that account type with the structure. And then the approval is council approval. The city operations fee is enacted by council. And just to put some dollars to it, here's a range of options from $1 to $9 in the current rate structure, what amount of funding it would generate.
I bet you're going past that. I was going to slow down for a minute.
Any questions on the rate or the structure or the city operations fee in general?
Mayor Hoy and Josh, this is Linda. Yes, I do have a question. You mentioned that we couldn't change the structure of the operational fee to the large businesses, but you said in about a year we could change that. Have you looked at how that might affect these estimated annual revenue?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. The commercial portion, even if it were fairly drastically increased, is still relatively small compared to the residential portion of accounts. So even if you were to increase it monumentally, it still wouldn't generate that much more revenue compared to the residential rate.
Josh, can you remind us how many residential customers we have out of that 69,455?
I'm thinking it's like 39,000, but I'm not positive. About 39,000. Great.
And I know we haven't really talked about the current. I know it's in the report. The current rate, which is like $8.93 or something.
Right. The rate is $8.93. And it escalates with the CPI for the West region. So it's have to go up another 6.25% automatically next January.
Okay. So to Councilor Nishioka's point, let's see, what'd you say, 39,000 of the 69? So that's, what is that? 3/5, roughly. That's not, I mean, that's not an insignificant number. So I'm confused as to why you're saying that if we increase that commercial rate, that doesn't affect the overall that much.
It definitely will affect the overall. It's just not as impactful as the residential rate.
So there's roughly 39,000 residential customers and roughly 30,000 commercial accounts. Is that right?
I can pull up the exact.
Okay.
But there's only two rates, right? Commercial, residential. There's no third category. Is that correct?
There is a third category. It's at 80% of the residential rate for multifamily and charged by unit.
Okay, thank you. I'm curious to hear, and I appreciate this being stated, that a small coffee shop that employs 4 people, including the owner working round time and around the clock, is paying the same rate as a much larger employer such as Walmart or Costco. So I would be interested in seeing what that rate restructuring would look like for sure. Because I want to do what we can to support the locally homegrown businesses as best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And my recommendation is not to not do it, but just not to do it yet.
Until next year when restructuring is possible.
Correct. Right now, our system limitations are restricting that via the account.
Okay.
And Josh, can we talk for a minute more about that one, like you just threw in about multifamily? So it's 80% of the residential rate times the number of units.
Correct. So units are a piece of data that we collect in the utility billing software. So when it was implemented, it was set at 80% of the residential rate for multifamily.
So if the residential rate is 893, 80% of that is 6 something.
Yes.
I don't want to try to do math on the fly.
$7.14.
So this year, okay, it's on it.
Is the winner.
So 714 per unit per month.
Yeah, that's correct. And the commercial rate is 4304.
So if we're getting into the weeds, do you know how many multifamily units are part of that 69,455?
25,000. Yeah, almost 26.
So we have 26,000 accounts that are multifamily.
Sorry, those are units, they're not accounts. So like a 200 unit complex would be one account. So they're a part of the account total, but we don't equate one to one.
But they're $7.14 per unit.
Per unit, correct?
Okay. We got to back up for a second. So when we say account, total utility customers, that doesn't necessarily, we're not saying that those are actual utility customers. Those are units.
So this number here, 69,455, those are bills. Those are individual bills that go out. On those bills, there could be multiple units.
And then we have 26,000 units, multifamily units.
Correct.
But that's not included in that 69,455.
Correct. It's a smaller number because there's complexes with a lot of units.
Could be 2, could be 700.
Yeah, it ranges two up to several hundred.
Okay. Okay. Other questions on this part?
Josh, do we know what other cities do in terms of structuring their commercial rates? Do they make greater distinctions depending on the size of business?
There's some variation, I believe, but often it's set either at like the meter level or this account level, so it's a pretty standard rate. Tommy, I know you did a little extra research on this piece. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. We looked at like Ashland and Hillsborough, Corvallis, a couple other cities for how they structure these fees differently. And again, none of this could happen currently, but in the future, Salem could structure it similarly. There's different ways they differentiate by type of commercial customer. Some differentiate by type of business. So take like a retail or a wholesaler, a restaurant, hotel, motel. Some charge differently per square foot of building. Some do a combination of those two things. You have a retail rate, but that'll vary per square foot of the building. You have a restaurant, but that varies per 100 square feet of the building. And then finally, a third category is that some differentiate by size of the water meter itself, which is is less fine-tuned, but you're going to have some of that differentiation there because your larger businesses are going to be larger water users.
Josh, I have a quick question. If it's okay, Mayor. If we did increase the city's operations fee, would it just increase the one line item that we currently have, or would it add another line item to the bill?
I believe we're limited by line items, so it would just increase the current line item.
Okay, thank you.
If I understand this correctly, let's assume, it says, looking at the column where it says estimated additional annual revenue. Let's assume that you had the fee at $9, the highest potential one. That still is only additional annual revenue of 8.19. And you've talked about structural deficits much greater than that. So are you saying that even if we set the fee to $9, it wouldn't be enough to basically cover our deficit?
Yeah, that's correct. The current deficit is projected at 15 million in fiscal year 2020.
But if I'm understanding this correctly, that wouldn't be setting the fee to $9, it'd be increasing the fee by $9, which is almost double. So it'd be 18 change, so they're doubling it.
The next one is an employee paid payroll tax. There is some use in Oregon, the most notable is the Eugene. They have a public safety payroll tax, employer and employee tax they implemented a couple of years ago. The balance of these are all for transit districts for bus service. The structure a little different than the recommendation from a couple of years ago. If you remember back, we were looking at kind of a graduated rate based on the wage, with the top amount being 0.38% of wages. We're recommending a flat rate for even by employers and the city, especially if we want to contract with the Department of Revenue. That was one of their recommendations, and I think they'd be unwilling to administer it without a flat rate. It would be based on where the work is performed, not the physical location of the employer, and apply to all wagers and include a self-employment tax. And the approval is either by the city council or Salem vote. And just real quick before we go to the rate, this is from 2019, so it is pre-pandemic, but this is an inflow outflow analysis that the census puts out. So what you see there on the left, 72,000 people work outside of Salem, and they commute into Salem where they work. That middle number.
So they live outside, you mean?
They live outside of Salem. That middle number, 38,160, those are the people who live and work in Salem. And then of the people that live in Salem that work elsewhere, that's the number on the right, 35,000. Just to put in perspective, an employee paid payroll tax, you're hitting a different tax base than you are with a property tax or a operations fee related to homeowners, in that case, property owners. With this, you would hit some of that commute shed that comes into Salem and use city services also.
Josh, does that take into account post-pandemic where we have so many people that are working remotely now?
It does not. This is 2019 data. For the calculation, you can see the 0.4% of wages, 16.3 million, up to 0.3% of wages at 42.6. These are just to show you a range of options. The city council could pick a different number as well. And if you were to do the calculation, it's for 0.4% of wages, you would use decimal 0.2074 times the wage. Just to be clear.
So can we go back to slide 19? So the bullet point reads, based on where work is performed and not physical location of the employer. And my concern with that post-pandemic is that anecdotally, I know plenty of state workers who their office address, the physical location is Salem, Oregon. But instead of commuting from Portland, McMinnville, or all these other communities, they're now working remotely in McMinnville or Portland, and they're not. So their work is being performed elsewhere. So pre-pandemic, I think all of them would have been covered by this employee paid payroll tax. We didn't have the generous hybrid or remote work provisions the state now has. I'm just concerned that this payroll tax wouldn't reach as many employees as it would have pre-pandemic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There could be some remote workers that wouldn't fall under this tax.
And how would we, is there any way we can collect data to figure that out? Because I wouldn't want to rely on my anecdotes.
I think it would only be anecdotal at this point. We don't have any kind of business registration. We're relying on kind of aggregated data from the Department of Revenue, or not the Department of Revenue, the Employment Department. So we don't have specific, you know, what's your specific work location. So this is on the current basis of the state transit tax. This is the Salem area taxes based on that. And because of that uncertainty, we did factor in a fairly large discount just to take into account some variation that could have occurred with that data.
Is there any way to get better data?
Not easily, no. I mean, we could do some kind of survey. We could actually call a representative sample of businesses in Salem and check with them. But there's nothing to compel them to answer our question.
The other side of the pandemic, folks working out of town and not commuting in, but we could also have more people staying at home in Salem for businesses elsewhere. I mean, absolutely, there's two sides to that coin. We just don't know, and we don't have any way to gather that.
Not easily, no. I mean, it's kind of two things, right? You can either do it on where the work is performed or the physical location of the employer. You know, in the case of the state, all their remote workers, they could say they work out of a different office. Right? I mean, I think there's ways around that headquarters question to where your employer is located. But the actual work that's performed in Salem is something that we could actually audit.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Yeah, I wanted to share in a finance committee meeting, we talked about this. And for example, Josh, if there's a contractor in Kaiser, based out of Kaiser, and they send their handyman, their contractors to work in Salem, they would have to pay that labor the minute they cross into Salem. How would we even track that? I think this is really tricky to implement and make sure it's being complied with. I just sort of see it as sort of a disaster waiting to happen.
You know, it's still new in Oregon. If you go to the Midwest, it's very much more common. There's local payroll taxes where they deal with this kind of situation all the time. So yes, there would be a pretty big learning curve on the part of the city and on the part of employers. But I think we could work through it.
Well, one of the concerns I have is a Salem-based small construction company being at a slight disadvantage from a Portland-based one that sends in their workers, doesn't report. You know, and here we are having to burden that, you know, carry that burden to children over and over a million times a day.
There's definitely some compliance mechanisms we could employ in that case. I mean, if you have a contractor coming from Salem, they have to get a building permit here in Salem. We would know that they're doing work here in Salem.
I know it's possible. It's just who's going to make that call? Who's going to enforce it? Who's going to? We have enough staff. That doesn't sound like we do. So I just want to be realistic on what's possible.
The Eugene tax, they're administering with 4 employees, just for comparison. They're still a ways away from full compliance, but they're getting there and they're collecting a fairly large amount of revenue.
And is it location based like this proposal?
I believe theirs is based on the physical location.
So it'd be different model. Councilor Stapleton.
I'm gonna go back in my memory before COVID, which is dicey. So just bear with me, please, because I believe I was in the conversations, or sorry, not in the conversations, but hearing the conversations in the council chambers last time we talked about this. And we were talking or you all were talking about whether to send this to the voters or whether to enact it as council. And I believe that there was conversations about the fact that you could enact it and then take it to the voters in several years. Am I remembering that at all? Or would this just be a council thing or just a voter thing?
That would be my recommendation. I would refer to the city attorney and the city manager if they have a different opinion. Eugene, that's what they did, is they enacted it and they need to refer to voters. They're having challenges with the timing, you know, collecting and actually starting up their new programs to see the result before it goes to voters. So they're having some challenges with that approach. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, thank you.
So just to be clear, we decided to send it to the voters. And then we withdrew that because it was literally right as the pandemic started. So the last day that we could withdraw it, we withdrew it and did not send it to the voters. It didn't implement it.
Josh, is there a reason that you decided to, or that your recommendation is based on where the work is performed versus the physical location of the employer?
That's the basis that the Department of Revenue uses. So if they were to collect a tax for us, it would align with their structure. They'd be able to collect it for us more easily. It's not necessarily the direction we have to go. We could do it ourselves and do it a different way. But if we want that to be an option, that's one of the considerations.
This
So
is
Mayor
Councilor
Hoy, I had a question. Oh, go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. It just feels like this is going to be a really difficult way to fund, and we may have problems getting compliance. And I just think that this is a bit trickier than certainly trickier than the operations fee or operations fee. Anyway, it sounds challenging. That's
Councilor Barney.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. Yeah, my question was because with Eugene having a different structure where it's the physical location of the employer, are they then collecting their own rather than the Department of Revenue?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Just real quick, yes, I think it would be difficult to administer and it would be difficult for employers to get on board without them maintain compliance. One of the benefits is you see organic growth. It's a lot more than you would see with a local option levy or a city operations fee. It would actually respond to the economy. We've seen the past several years about 8% growth in payroll in the Salem area. So that's one benefit. The other one is it's a very different revenue source. Well, Tommy and Colleen, they're going to touch on this a little bit later. But right now, we're very property tax centric. This is a completely different kind of tax and we really diversify our revenue streams.
Well, I just want to reiterate, I know a lot of people who work for the state who have one foot in their Salem office. They might go there one day a week, but the rest they're working remotely from literally anywhere in the state. In fact, a colleague of mine at DOJ sold his home in Oregon, lives in Idaho, and has an agreement with DOJ to come in 1 week a month and just schedules his work accordingly. I don't know how we gauge where the work is performed when we have lots of employers embracing a hybrid work policy. And that accommodation is great for a lot of reasons, but I don't know how we calculate where work is performed when we're not following a traditional model now at a lot of different employers, and state government in particular is following a wide range of models depending on their needs and their employees' needs. There's an observation.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Yeah, one more comment. The other thing too is this is 100% on the backs of working class people. You know, not anybody. If your income is rents, capital gains, wealthy, they're not paying. You know, so this is 100% on the backs of working class people.
I think with the one exception, one difference with this recommendation is inclusion of a self-employment tax. So it would capture that pass-through income from LLCs or partnerships, those kinds of situations.
I know, those are self-employed entrepreneurs, so, you know, not the easiest life either.
This is the option that would bring in the most revenue, is that correct?
It's a nuanced question because any of the revenue options could be scaled up to
Sure.
bring in additional revenue. It's in a very different base than the other two, right? Because you're capturing people that live outside of Salem and work in Salem. So the local option levy, we're about to talk about, and the city operations fee, you're able, only Salem residents.
Yeah, and the idea is that the folks that do come into town are using our services but not paying for any of it. So whether they call 911 while they're here or using our sidewalks or our streets or any of those things, the park on their lunch break, they're getting that all for free right now. And we're hoping to possibly bring them into the fold of people holding this thing together.
Yeah, that could be one of them.
Some of the feedback we got from the public last time we were having this conversation was that folks felt it was not fair for the city of Salem residents to be implementing this tax on, and then on people who don't get the opportunity to vote on it. And so that was one of the just to show that with colleagues who were on council then, people who were going to be subject to the tax didn't get the opportunity to vote on it. Did not like that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges with being one of the first to try to implement something new. It would be different if all our surrounding communities had a similar tax, because then you would just have the same basis. You just work and live in a different location. Yeah.
And I can't, because where I work is here, and everybody knows where I am. So I will have to pay. That making sense?
You don't work in the city.
That's true, I do
You
work in
wouldn't
the
pay.
county. You're good. No, I'm Julie.
You're 150 feet outside.
Over all over.
So you're paying,
I'm working.
you're paying.
Isn't that true?
I don't know.
Yeah, that would be true. So,
Yep.
So we would work with you to come figure out some kind of allocation.
This sounds complicated. It also seems like through the pandemic, people just found a way to work around a whole lot of things. And I didn't get that opportunity because I am where I am.
This next one is the local option levy. It's widely used across Oregon. Having been implemented in Salem. An additional property tax levy on your property tax bill that does expire when you want for 3 to 5 years. And it does have to go to voters. In this case, it would be we pick something very specific for a downward option levy. Like firefighters and police and firefighters or some combination. And then when you go to voters, it would be a fixed dollar amount that would be applied to your property tax rate. One consideration, I think, on the next slide. It should have been before, but my one point is compression. So one of the challenges with 95 and 50 is that we're limited to $10 for your general government. For Polk County, it's not an issue right now, but in the Marion County side, we're at $10.40. And we already have properties in the Marion County side of Salem that are paying their full tax rate because of that compression. The local option ones also get compressed first of a 400 ton. The city of Salem permanent rate or the county permanent rate, that local option ones would be compressed 100%. Right now, it's not as big of a challenge with compression, just with the spread we have between real market value and assessed value. I apologize because we spent an hour just on compression. But right now it's not a big consideration, but if we were to have another event like the recession back in 2008, compression plays a big part and it moves out a lot of that local option levels. Just some estimates. We show a few years here just to show that some growth. But we show $1.25 per thousand to $2 a thousand. So just if you were looking at property tax saving, you have $2 values. One's a real market value, one's an assessed value. The assessed value, say it's 200,000, you would take 200 times the $1.25, and that would be your annual rate that you would pay in October. Property taxes would be.
So I really like examples. It just helps me understand things better. So say we went for a levy and the voters approved it and we were able to hire new firefighters. I'll throw you out there. So then say the worst thing happens and we go into another recession. What happens to the folks? Does that just mean that we turn around and let those people that we just hired go?
You'd have to let some respond.
Okay.
That's goes down to the state of the services. Our general obligation bonds for untied expenses. Nice. There's some inherent risk.
Keep getting the message on the screen, Josh. I don't know. Can the folks online still hear us? Yeah, I didn't think so.
I can hear you, Chris, but Josh was cutting in and out.
How about can we hear a little better?
It doesn't look like it.
Can you hear Josh at all?
I can't understand him. It's very blurry. So I was able to hear most of it earlier, but just in the last few minutes, no.
Stand by, please.
Can you hear me if I come over here?
Yes, I can.
Might be, it's a totally different type of microphone was on over there. Now you just can't do the mouse. Is that better? Can you hear better now?
It doesn't.
Yes.
Oh.
I didn't hear that.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
We might just need you to be real close to that mic. Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge to hear you in the room as well, just to be honest.
Okay, I appreciate that.
If you could give us a little bit more context for this one, I think that would be helpful. You're kind of, I understand why you're focused on revenue because, you know, you're the city finance guy. But as city councilors, we're trying to figure out like what's the impact going to be on people. So give us so that estimated annual revenue for the $1.25, how does that compare to the current tax rate from the city of Salem?
Sure. So the current rate is $5.8315. So you know, the $2.50 rate would be about half of what they're currently paying for property taxes. So let me just pull. So a $1.25 rate would be an additional $250 for the average household in Salem.
Could you say that one more time, please?
So at a $1.25 per thousand local option levy, it would be an additional $250 for the average assessed valued house in Salem
Annually. Thank you.
So you're saying if the current rate is $5.83 roughly, if we were to increase it to, you would add $1.25 to the 5.83 rate, is that, am I understanding that correctly?
You would see it as a separate line on your property tax bill, but yes, in essence, you would. So
it basically go up to $7.
Correct. Yeah. So the current rate for an average household in Salem is just under $1,200. You would add an additional $250 for $1.25 per thousand.
Okay. And under the chart that you were showing us on the other slide, you were showing us a range of $1.25 to $2. Is there And $2 is not that I'm proposing we go above it. I want to make sure I understand all our options. Can you go above an extra $2, or is that not possible for the reasons you were explaining earlier?
There's no limitation. The higher the rate, the more compression you would see. Because as we get up further and further above that $10 limit, more houses are going to fall into that category where they're going to be compressed.
So you're not going to actually, you could raise it. And again, I'm not proposing this. So for all the trolls on the internet, please take note. I'm not suggesting you would raise it by $20 because you would never get there anyway because of compression, right?
So this is an interesting question. In other districts where they're funded a lot of local option levies, you actually have competing local option levies. So you actually see them significantly over levying in order to capture more and more revenue. So as more and more houses don't pay, you have to increase the rate for the other house.
And this is for all property owners.
That's correct.
Okay, because we talk about homeowners kind of, and I want to bring us back up to it's property owners.
All property owners that are subject to the property tax. So not the $1.2 billion worth of state property that's within the city.
No, that if you're exempt, you're still exempt from local option.
This is Councillor Nishioka again. Josh, could we speak to the fact that in the Finance Committee, we spoke about the potential of doing a levy that could focus in on public services, or you could do public safety and parks. So you could promote, or the levy would be basically for some of the services that people would be more likely to want to support. Is that true?
You could absolutely fund specific services with it, yes.
And that would be the idea. If you're going out to the voters, you want to sell, you want to sell them with an idea and sell them services, and that would be the thing. You would figure out what you wanted to try to increase, what our biggest need is. A lot of law enforcement agencies do that. A lot of fire departments do that. Parks.
Yeah, a lot of local option levies, they have, catchphrases, parks and police, or various other things. The voters can see when they're voting for.
So I was doing a little Googling before our meeting, and I saw that Springfield recently approved a renewal of their 5-year public safety levy by an overwhelming margin. And that was specifically for public safety. Polk County passed one back in 2015 for sheriff's office, patrol and jail, NDA office. And then Hillsborough also overwhelmingly recently supported a local option levy for just to maintain current level of police, fire, and parks maintenance services. So it's definitely an option. One thing I'm curious to know about is when I think of public safety, I don't just think of police and fire. I think of serving other individuals in crisis, such as our homeless population. We currently use a lot of our services, one-time money, for our shelters and our SOS team. Could we do a public safety levy that included things like homeless related services in addition to some of our other first responders?
Yeah, the revenue is not restricted unless you restrict it in the ballot. So it fall under whatever language you use in the ballot measure, that's what the restriction is. So if you allow the use for unsheltered programs, you could include that.
And the reason I said is that every time we do a survey, and have done a survey for the last 3 or 4 years, homelessness, addressing it has been top of their list. And I know closely following behind that are other public safety priorities. But what I keep hearing from my residents over and over again is, what are you doing to address homelessness? And services is a huge part of that cost. And that's a huge question mark for all of us because of sustainability. So I'd be interested in seeing a levy that included some of those homeless related services, our shelters, the case management, folks like that who are helping get people off the streets and getting them housed once and for all, so that we're not just putting a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery.
And it really becomes a political question at that point, where just like it was for the bond, where we made a calculation on what we thought would be the best projects to include in the bond, that we thought the voters would be most likely to approve. And that's what we would do if we would decide to go out for a levy. We would decide what services do we want to package together that we think that would be most palatable to Salem voters. And then it would be a decision whether it's homeless services, whether it's fire, police, parks, and like Josh said, we could pick all of those things or none of those things or whatever combination we want.
One thing I would ask you to keep in mind is the current deficit, $15 million, that's across all services. You could definitely focus on filling that need for an individual type of service. But, it's not as easy to implement a new revenue measure when you're just going to get the same service. So the increased service would be important.
Usually you'll see like it's called like an enhanced service district or enhanced law enforcement. They use some type of word to like some value add the voters are going to be getting above and beyond their current level of service. Otherwise, the odds of them approving it are pretty slim.
Right.
When would this go to voters? If when is the next time that we could go to voters?
Well, you could go with the May election. I wouldn't recommend it. Well, maybe we're past the deadline, but it would have to be a general election, May or November.
Is it possible to have more than one thing on the ballot to the voters?
Yep. Yes, you could. There would definitely be some political considerations, and my third topic I wanted to talk about is community engagement. So that could include some focus groups and polling, talk about that and what messaging you want to put out for whatever revenue measures you want to put forward.
So one thing before we move on to that, I would just like to throw out there is having worked a good portion of my career for an agency that relied on levies, it does put you on that political hamster wheel every 3 years or 5 years or whatever you're going out, and you're having to really focus on passing that levy again or cutting a significant part of services. So just know that that's a thing, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of energy. And most of you know what it took to pass the bond recently. It's the same kind of deal to pass a levy every time. And so if you get on that 3 or 5 year cycle, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work on elected officials because of course the staff doesn't work on things like that. So just something to factor in.
And I think it also makes sense. People will be comparing whatever our next ask is compared to whatever our last ask was. So in the bond measure, we got a lot for parks. So, I was thinking politically, wouldn't they say to us, well, didn't we just approve a $300 million infrastructure bond measure that included a lot of park upgrades already?
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and the bond is for things,
Right.
the levy would be for services.
Right.
But yeah, so that's exactly the political calculation we're gonna have to make if we decide to go down that road.
Just real quick, I want to touch on the local gas tax. It's widely used across Oregon, charged when fuel is purchased, and it's administered by the Oregon Department of Transportation, and it does require voter approval. And here's estimated annual revenue at a few different rates.
And can you remind us what that could be used for?
So it carries the same restrictions as the state highway revenue. So it's for transportation projects that include sidewalks, bikes, roadways, things like that.
So, and it can only be used for that, right?
Right. Yes.
Could it be used for services or physical improvements or both?
It could be used for either.
Okay.
What about public transportation? No.
You within the public street right away.
Okay.
That's fine.
For those online who couldn't hear that, it has to be within the public street right of way. And if I read the report correctly, the finance committee did not recommend this.
No, and if you, the slide earlier, you know, to explore other revenue options, there were some equity concerns. And also what do the state highway fund and gas tax look like in the future? So it's something the state will have to grapple with in other cities that are having gas taxes. But you know, staff use it as a good interim solution. But there does definitely be a different revenue solution in the future.
I guess I have a question. This would, since it requires a vote, wouldn't that require about the same amount of effort as like a local option, a local levy or whatever?
If you wanted it to pass.
Yeah. So there doesn't seem to be as much bang for the buck here. And I think that this is, Josh, were you alluding to the fact that this is expected to like decrease a bit over time because cars are becoming more fuel efficient and there's a move to more and more electric and hybrid vehicles?
That is correct. And I will note that it's a one-time vote. It doesn't have to be renewed.
That's a good point though. Okay. That's a good counterpoint.
It's a one-time effort.
So once it's established, it's permanent once it's repealed by the voters.
I believe so. Or you want to change the rate.
Right. And there's no, you can choose whatever rate we wanted to present to them.
Yeah, there are limits.
Oh, okay.
I believe. I know Portland's at 10 cents per gallon.
Portland is? Seriously.
I mean, I guess I'm not opposed to this one. I'm open to all of our options. Is now a time where we could maybe hear why the finance committee like chose not to include this one? Was it just the relatively small amount, or what were the?
Yeah, I can share a few. First one was just feeling that here we are having equity goals and we're going to be benefiting from more gas paid for. So just, I think that felt a little weird. Second of all was like, once again, going back to working class people that don't have the advantage of working behind a camera. Let's see what are the other reasons, and how electric cars aren't paying their fair share to date for maintaining our streets with this gas tax. So just those, and then also knowing that in the future we're setting ourselves up for failure, even though maybe it's a band-aid, you know. So that's for all those reasons. It just didn't. Unless anybody else wants to add it.
How did it set us up for failure? I didn't follow that.
Well, because it's dwindling, and because of more electric cars, more efficiency, and it's a dwindling amount. And I guess if anything, we're trying to find the most sustainable way, even though it's an impossible word, to fund city services going forward. And I have to have this conversation every couple of years. You know, I don't want to set up our future city council. So that was part of the discussion.
Thank you. That's helpful. My thought on the gas tax is it's almost like a separate conversation from the rest of this, because it really doesn't go to solve our general fund structural problem. This isn't anything to do with the general fund. But that doesn't mean it's not a good idea. It means that if we wanted to create a revenue stream to do some of our deferred maintenance that we have to wait for a bond every 10 years for, that would give us a fund to actually do that better than we currently do. That's what that would do. It wouldn't, but it doesn't solve the other issues at all.
Yeah, and that's why we recommended it. We asked the staff to find out other alternatives, because that's the only one that was presented to us. So we're like, what other one? So that was how we ended that discussion, knowing that there's a gap. Yeah.
Okay.
And just to be clear, the transportation service fund is separate and distinct, but it does have a similar trajectory. So we're looking at a deficit spend for the next 5 years and insolvent within that 5-year period. That's why we want to make sure part of the conversation, because if we're implementing revenue options in the general fund and we don't do something for the transportation service fund, if we decide that in 3 years, it's in big trouble.
So we are using general fund dollars to fund those transportation projects right now?
Sorry, I didn't mean to create any confusion. No, we're not using it. It's a separate issue, but it's still a challenge that we'll need to address. And if we're sending things to voters, it just needs to be part of the conversation.
This is Counselor Nishioka again, just wanting to be reminded, the local gas tax would have to go to the voters.
Yes, that's the only one where that's absolutely required.
So a levy,
And a levy, sorry.
thank you, okay. Thank you.
Okay. I invite Moss Adams back up.
It's closer to my face than Josh's, so I don't have that problem. Colleen Rosillas from Moss Adams. So as we talked about last month, the city engaged us to do independent validation of the deferred needs analysis, internal service needs, as well as the city's forecast in these revenue options. So we looked at these 4 options, we validated them independently. We actually didn't do step 3 on this slide. It was too late for your packet to change it because Josh went ahead and did that. But one of the things that's important for us is to really think about that from an independent third party. What are the pros and cons of each of these options? How does this potentially work for you and provide that? I am going to give a spoiler alert to the so what counselors that all of your revenue assumptions were free from error. And but we are going to get into the detail of what those assumptions are so that you know that this is backed by good math and you can make sound decisions going forward. So I'm going to pass it over to Tommy to get into the details.
So I'm here to get a little more into the weeds of validation. So validation is the process in which we examine and we review a financial model and we verify its effectiveness. Revenue models are tools that utilize current and past data to make informed predictions about how revenue could be collected in the future. These revenue models are central to forecasting how the city can increase revenue. Because these models are so important, as my colleague Colleen was saying, we acted as third-party validators, ensuring that the city models are of high quality. For validation, we have a 3-step process. Sorry, I'm just making this clear for everybody. We have a 3-step process. First, we review for error. This is pretty simple, just making sure that there's no mathematical mistakes made in the model. Something that is a small error in year 1 could turn into a much larger problem in year 10. Second, we do an evaluation of the revenue model's effectiveness. We examine whether it uses appropriate data, uses good assumptions, and whether, just overall, whether it's likely to be a good predictor of revenue. Then third, where applicable, and this is mostly for the local option levy, we ensure that the model is in alignment with Oregon regulations regarding municipal revenues. So now I'm going to dig into the revenue models themselves. And as Colleen said, spoiler alert, they're all quite good. So first we examined the local option levy. And we found the revenue model prepared by city staff to be valid. It was free from error and it aligns with the complex Oregon property tax regulations. The model itself is the most complex of the 4. It examines every single property with it that would be subject to this tax. And it assembles them, think about it in a massive spreadsheet. Then for every single property, it shows the expected revenue to be derived from that property from a local option levy, which is no small feat with every single property. The revenue model is set up to navigate Oregon's complex property tax regulations for each property, particularly around compression, which Josh was mentioning previously, which reduces the amount of revenue that can be collected for a given property. The model also accounts for some tax that may be delinquent and some tax that can't be collected, and the others, which is a common thing to account for. In conclusion for this one, the city's revenue model is very well made. As we'll explain later, a city's revenue structure is strongest when there are many sources of revenue. And a local option levy is an important part of ensuring that Salem has adequate revenue. However, the local option levy does have drawbacks that should be considered. And I mention this not to discourage the use of the local option levy, but to highlight that it should not be relied upon as a sole source of revenue. First, local option levies, as we were discussing, require voter approval, so the adoption in the first place is not guaranteed. Further, as Mayor Hoy was saying, maintaining a local option levy for operations requires that voters renew this levy every 5 years. So city services that rely upon such revenues could be suddenly without funding 5, 10, or 15 years down the road if the vote doesn't pass. Next, local option levies are due to something called compression. There are regulations in Oregon state law that Josh was talking about that limit how much property tax can be levied upon a single property. And this limit is not just for a single government. It's not just for the taxes that Salem imposes. It's for governments combined in Oregon. So if multiple governments have their own property taxes on a given property, once the total property tax hits the limit set by the state, governments still get more revenues from issuing more property tax. The property taxes get reduced or compressed to stay within the limit. For Salem, it's already sort of coming through in Marion County, and compression could become further an issue over the life of the levy if other governments pass their own local option levies.
Do things like the bond play into that, or is that totally separate?
I believe it. John, I'm going to turn to Josh.
Yeah, it's outside the limits for measures 5 and 50.
Thank you.
So no, was that a no? That's a no. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, that was the language about that.
This last slide here on the local option levy shows the revenue loss due to compression. This is from the entire state of Oregon from 1998 to 2017. And the orange bar in each of them shows property tax levied by cities, sometimes through local option levies, that was unable to be collected due to compression. This is a widespread issue in Oregon in all governments, and particularly around local option levies. Are there any questions or concerns regarding local option levies before I move on to the next one?
Well, I'm just struck by how much more compression has happened over time. Is that because they're just more and more types of government are using them at the same time? Is that why it's gotten steadily worse since the 90s?
There's some of that. There's also some of difficult to explain this simply, but the Josh, do you want to?
Sure. As so if you notice, it went up after 2008. So say when the housing bubble popped and property values went down. So if your property value, the real market value, drops below the assessed value, your assessed value goes down with it, and it doesn't go back up. So you get a new base much lower. So that spread between real market value and assessed value gets really close or zero. So that's what you're seeing there, and we're just now getting back in 2023 to very little compression. We had less than 400,000 in the current year for Salem.
I need a TED Talk in compression.
There has been a trend across Oregon, particularly in the more rural counties, of forming special purpose districts in order to grab some of that levy for things like you just talked about, right? A library district, a park or fire district. But that also then contributes to compression and takes away from the general fund of those local governments. So it really is a catch-22, and they all end up in the same fiscal position at the end anyway.
Next, I'm going to turn to the city's payroll tax. This revenue model is just as effective, just as valid. It is a lot more simple to validate. And we also found it to be valid. There are no errors. It is based upon solid data provided by the Oregon Department of Revenue. The calculations are logical and sound, and it accounts for the administrative costs that it would take to actually collect this tax. It takes the total gross wages of Salem employees from the state data and multiplies it by the various proposed tax rates, and then subtracts administrative costs. Unlike the previous one, the model also accounts for some tax that is delinquent or that can't be collected, which is again very common.
I'm sorry, I'm confused there. When you say it's based on solid assumptions, but when we were talking about this, when we said we didn't know what the potential folks who would be paying this are because of the changes with the pandemic. So I'm confused by what solid assumptions you're referring to.
So the data comes from The financial data, the gross wages data comes from the state and Josh, feel free to correct me at any time if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. It comes from the previous fiscal year. So you guys the data is very unsure about who this is capturing, what businesses are going to be captured, but the state data shows within this jurisdiction, here was the gross wages.
And there has also been a lag in census data over the last couple of years. So that inflow outflow model that you saw earlier, that's based on the American Community Survey, that was scaled way back during the pandemic, and the census itself was scaled way back during the previous administration. So as we think about some of that data, there's a big lag. We're just getting 2021 data from American Community Survey right now, and that's not going to reflect current state or what folks might be doing in and out of the city in 2025, for example. So it's better to go back to 2019 and look at that data, which we know is reliable and consistent, versus what has happened in the last 3 years. And our hope is that that data gets better over time.
And the gross wages that the Department of Revenue provided, I think they're valid. We gave it a good discount for kind of that in and out question. And we are getting updated quarterly information as quarters close. So we're continuing to get updated, numbers based on the actual tax they're collecting, gross wages within Salem. The only question would be kind of that, so similar to a gas tax, on land gas trends as they're in and out of Salem, that same consideration would apply to this data as well. But we accounted for that. We gave it a 20% discount.
And I'll also highlight with the 20% discount, that also is very useful for accounting for the problems with the implementation that we were talking about. The problems, like any problems that you expect with compliance, the model itself does account for that by saying, if we don't collect from, and it has this generous 20% rate, we can still expect considerable revenue from this tax. While a city payroll tax is currently only used by 2 cities in Oregon, this type of tax is widespread in cities in other parts of the country. And then also in the West and elsewhere, many state capitals and college towns have these taxes in place. And then to address concerns with implementation, I will say that a huge boon for Salem here is that Eugene is one of those 2 cities that is implementing a payroll tax. It has its community safety payroll tax. Of the thousands of cities in the US, Eugene is among the 3 or 5 most common among many factors compared to you guys, and not just because it's right down the road. There's real opportunities, even if they do structure it different from how you guys, if you were to implement it, even if they structure it differently from how you do, there's considerable opportunities for intergovernmental learning, cooperation, and figuring out how to implement this best, because you guys are very similar.
If memory serves, they were implementing this thing back when we referred ours to the voters before we withdrew it. And that was 3 years ago. And it's still not implemented?
It's implemented. They're collecting revenue. They started just over a year ago.
And I apologize if I was unclear. I didn't mean they hadn't implemented it yet, but there's always opportunities in government operations for trying out how to do things better, increase compliance, increase efficiency, et cetera.
Thank you.
Any more questions on the payroll tax before I move to the next one? Next, we looked at the gas tax. As you might expect from the previous ones, we were able to validate this revenue model as well. It's constructed from gasoline sales data provided by the Oregon Department of Transportation, and the calculations used to determine expected revenue are sound. The model takes fuel sales data from the Department of Transportation and then multiplies it by the number of cents per gallon that could be included in the tax. The model also accounts for the cost of administration from the state and the Department of Transportation. The data used from the model is solid, the methodology is logical, and there are no errors that we found. Any questions on the gas tax before I finish with the operations fee?
I'm not sure if you told us this earlier, but how many other local jurisdictions in Oregon are using a local option gas tax?
So there are, it's very common in Oregon. There's at least 30 cities that have a gas tax. This includes Portland, Eugene, Springfield, and Happy Valley. Yes.
I saw the other options discuss drawbacks. There are no drawbacks listed for this. Is that because there are none?
It's a great question. I would not say that this tax doesn't have drawbacks. Every single revenue measure you could try to pass, and my colleague Colleen will talk about this shortly, every single revenue type has strengths, every single type has weaknesses. I was only highlighting the drawbacks of the local option levy to highlight its very important structural limitations that are in Oregon specifically, difficult to conceptualize, and very important to think about not relying upon it as a single source of revenue. But great question. With every single one of these revenues, there are strengths, there are weaknesses. Finally, we examined the operations fee model, and we found the city's revenue model valid and effective. It's based on existing data maintained by the city on utility customers, and it logically calculates the expected revenue from the tax, applying the fee rates to the number of each type of customer within city utilities. The data for this one is particularly strong because it's in-house data that we know is of high quality. The methods used to calculate the revenues are logical and sound, and there are no errors. Are there any questions specific to the validation of the operations fee before I turn to our next subject? All right. Next, I'm going to turn it back to my colleague Colleen, who will discuss revenue diversification.
Okay. So we heard a lot of options tonight. It's important for us to talk about these options, not just kind of one by one, right? We know you have a $15 million structural deficit, but there's also keeping up with this level of service that we want to provide to the community and what we want to do. So revenue diversification, it's really similar to thinking about kind of your own retirement, right? Your own personal finances. We want to make sure that the city has more sources of revenue so that we can build resilience into the city's financial model. Structurally, in Oregon, we are challenged by laws around what we can and can't collect, but within that, we do have some flexibility to help to diversify. This helps us to protect against potential recessions, decreases in things like tourism, visitors to the city, folks living in the city, things like that. So it's sort of a simple concept, but it's also just really important to think about in this concept because not one single source will also address all of the deficits and needs that the city has. As Tommy mentioned, and as Councilor Gwynn pointed out, the source of revenue does have drawbacks. It also has some strengths. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about those. I think we talked about the local option levy a lot. The opportunities for an increase in taxes is as assessed value increases, as Salem continues to grow. That's an option for this tax to continue to increase naturally. That does, however, conversely, economic cycles can really impact what can be collected, as we saw on that prior bar chart. And compression is really a challenge, particularly in Marion County. So you want to be very careful about what we do pass with respect to a levy. An employee paid payroll tax. So as wages continue to increase, the payroll tax increases. As Salem continues to grow again, and you grow and diversify your economic base, that's good for the city. That is really primarily impacted by a recession. However, given the major employers here being primarily government entities, that is actually protects you a little bit more than maybe some other cities if they were to implement a tax like this. As Tommy mentioned, a lot of cities that are state capitals and have large public universities have a tax like this for this specific purpose. And so that is definitely a benefit for you all, or potential benefit. With respect to gas tax, so we know nationwide gas tax revenues have been going down for about 20 years. I started working in transportation consulting 20 years ago. We were talking about this. we're still talking about it. So there is also kind of that additional piece of the 2030 goal for electrification of vehicles. We anticipate at a minimum by 2030 that at least half of vehicles will be electric. And so that's pretty significant when we think about what those revenues look like. There also is obviously, as Councilor Nordick mentioned, folks are working from home, right? Commute patterns are changing, people drive less. And so our ability to get more from that tax is pretty limited. Oregon is one of the states that is exploring things like vehicle miles traveled taxes and other options to replace the deficits in the highway fund. So I would anticipate that cities will hop on to whatever the state eventually does, but it will likely be right up to that deadline. And we don't want to be right up to the deadline in a fund like this, especially. And the operations fee. So this is one that scales relatively well with the growth of the city and is pretty different from the other options. It does increase with new construction as the city grows. It can decrease if folks leave the city. And that's basically one of the only ways that it can decrease, or if you choose to lower it. Are there any questions now that we've got kind of those pros and cons just up on one slide or discussion that you all would like to have?
Yeah, just a quick one on the gas tax again. You mentioned that the state and other districts are looking at doing vehicles mile travel. Is there any way for Salem to jump ahead of the state and do, you know, something instead of like a gas tax, a vehicles mile travel fee or, you know, tax?
Yeah, I really have only seen those looked at the statewide level because it involves changing the way that we calculate our driving data. And there's also pretty significant privacy concerns with folks in terms of VMT. And so they're really working that out. There have been some pilot programs that folks have been able to opt in. All 3 states on the West Coast have done that in the last couple of decades, but there are definitely still some pretty significant kinks to work out.
Thank you. 2 points of comment and question. You know, I know that we're here on a very somber topic, but I do want to give kudos to the staff that we're still in a pretty good position, all things considered. And our city enjoys one of the highest credit score ratings available to a city. And it's because of how hard Josh and his entire team works to keep us in solid fiscal ground, not to mention the work of the budget committee, all the citizen members who participate in that, city manager of years past, as well as this year. So even though we're on a very somber topic, things could be so much worse. And I think that should be said. Now, I also really appreciate this slide because it helps people who don't have a finance background like me help understand it. And more importantly, explain it to other people, because that's what I am expected to do in my neighborhood association meetings, so on. On to the question. Slide 17 presented us with the increased city operations fee options. What it did, however, is that it assumed the same number of total utility customers, no matter what additional fee we set. Surely we are anticipating more utility customers in the years to come. We have several new projects that are shooting up all over the city. Are we taking into account additional utility accounts coming online in the next fiscal years and modeling our anticipated additional revenue?
Yes, we include a 1% increase, which is about the account growth we see on an annual basis.
Okay, that's the 1%. Thank you.
I guess it was in an email I can't locate right now tonight, but there was a breakdown of some of the other communities and their fees and our current total fee. If there's a way to resend that document, I would appreciate it, because it looks like we're, you know, below average in terms of the more similar communities in terms of like the fee that we charge.
Yeah, I think that's and it's an attachment to the staff report for the 1 page for the city operations fee. The one thing I'll note is that if you were to add, say, their permanent tax rate and compare it to their local option levy, you'll see some of the cities, they have this large operations fee because their tax rate is much, much smaller. So back in the nineties, they relied on timber revenue or something like that. And they were set at a very low rate, $1 or less. So they have to have a very large operations fee just to maintain services. And often it's a smaller community, several thousand people. But yeah, we can definitely get that back out to you.
So it's never apples to apples. Thank you.
Never, ever. No.
Yeah, Councilor Stapleton.
I have a quick question, and Colleen, I'm sorry, it's not for you. It's for Brian. If we don't do something like the gas tax or find some way to fund the transportation fund, are we looking at laying off people or just not doing projects in the next 5 years?
It would likely be a combination of both. A lot of our project funding actually comes from, with transportation, either comes from bond funding or from federal grants or state grants. Very little of the projects come from just the transportation funds themselves, with the exception of your maintenance overlays and slurry seals and sidewalk repairs. That's about all that gets funded out of the current gas tax. So those things could, well, the trajectory is going down. So I think in 2026, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to be in the same situation as we are with the general fund. So yeah, we either have to cut work and or people.
And sorry, just one more question. With the bond passing, there is a ton of work to be done, especially in your office, correct?
Correct.
So that's something that we're obligated to make sure happens, correct? Because of the voters. But how does that work if we can't fund the people who are doing the work? Do you understand my question?
Well, actually, with the bond funds, it's mostly engineers and private contractors that do the work.
Okay.
So the bond funds themselves actually fund all those projects.
Okay.
If you chose, the city staff could do more of the sidewalk work or some of the minor projects, but not necessarily the big ones. We're not equipped to do big capital projects. We could do smaller ones. So that would relieve some of the pressure there from a city resource perspective.
Okay.
And Colleen, I know we're still on the slide. Are we at the general question portion of the evening or?
Yeah, pretty much. So the only thing that I didn't really say about all of those options is that every revenue option has equity considerations. So as mentioned a couple of times tonight, Councilor Gonzalez brought that up about several of these, is that every tax we have to, or potential fee we have to consider through an equity lens. And a lot of cities are kind of taking that step back and saying, how do we make this as administratively simple and get us the dollars that we need without the burden being more on folks at the lower end of the economic spectrum? Unfortunately, Oregon's tax system puts us in a very difficult position with that. And every other city is also really wrestling with that. So wanted to validate that as well.
Thank you. I have a question, maybe for the finance committee folks or maybe staff. Did we consider other revenue options like, say, franchise fees to be a source of revenue, like say maybe cable rate franchise fees? I know we've had a conversation about that in the past. Like, was that considered as a central
for the finance committee?
Mm-hmm.
So what we did at the finance committee is we kind of reaffirmed the recommendation from that task force from 2018 that looked at 13 options that are in your packet tonight. Increasing franchise fees, I don't believe. Oh, they're capped.
Most of them are capped.
Most of them are capped.
Yeah.
So it takes a structural change before we can increase.
Take a state legislative change or federal change.
Okay, thank you.
We're happy to explore other options, but if you say that list, if you pulled it up, the magnitude of revenue that you can get from them are pretty small, and with the deficit we're looking at, we need some larger options to address that, because we'll just spin our wheels looking at smaller options to not get bid.
Other questions for staff?
Is it safe to assume we're not sitting on a bed with a lot of vacant FTEs, right? Because my recollection from the prior CFO during the pandemic was that we were holding some positions open during the pandemic just as a matter of being pretty fiscally conservative. And so it's not as if we have a bunch of vacant positions right now that we could eliminate. Not that I'm recommending that or suggesting it. I want to make sure that when I talk to people in my community, that's going to be one of the first things they ask. They always assume government is sitting on a pile of vacancies out there that, well, you don't need those people anyway. So help me answer those questions when I counter them.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. We don't hold positions open, not for any financial reason. During the pandemic, a lot of positions were held open because there wasn't really a good way to recruit people in the beginning. After the first year, and it didn't go away, we figured it out. So we filled a lot of those positions. Right now, we're not holding any positions open. We'd like to get every single one of them filled. So we're not setting a lot of vacancies that could go away. The police department is desperate to get their positions filled, and with the fire department.
That's what I thought, but I still wanted to hear that and make sure we all said that out loud, understood that out loud. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, this is Councilor Nishioka again. Sorry, Mayor Hoy. I wanted to go back to a comment that Moss Adams stated about the employee tax, that it could be considered something for community safety. I had not heard earlier about sort of kind of conforming an area that the employees tax would go to. Is that something that could be structured that way?
So I think that was in reference to the Eugene payroll tax, that it's a community safety tax. Salem could do that. We did do it with the last payroll tax. It was focused on public safety. That could be a consideration, but again, I'd recommend if we go down that path that we do some focus groups and polling to look and see what works in the community.
Any revenue source can be restricted by you all as you are thinking about adopting it. The more restrictions you put on, that means the less flexibility you have, though. So when we think about having a general fund deficit, we want as much flexibility as we can that's politically sustainable so that we can address anything that we need to address. Often we see levies say, here are the primary reasons, and then for general fund use as determined by the city is the last one to give you some of that flexibility. But you do want to balance what the community will respond to with what your total need is.
And the reason that we were looking at that in the past is because we were trying to find what we thought would be the most palatable to voters. Because we referred out the payroll tax to voters, we thought dedicating it to public safety might make it more likely to pass.
Thank you.
Josh, where are we at now?
We'll have a couple slides, but I think they just say discussion on
the revenue options and on community engagement.
Yeah, that's correct. So on the revenue options, the target and community engagement, what we're looking for is really direction to come back with a plan to move forward. You might call it a financial roadmap, to what options you'd like to be considered at what rates. Or just to solve a particular target, like if you want to solve the deficit, homeless programs, and some level of service enhancement, the baseline, or additionally, we're just looking for that. We can run any scenario you'd like to run, and we can tell you if it'll work. But it just depends what target you're looking for, what revenue options are palatable, and then at that point, what kind of community engagement you're looking for. The timeline's a lot different for a payroll tax if it's going to voters. So we're looking for some indication of that.
So I think what staff wants to hear from us is there what more information do we need in order to formulate this? If we want to take this in a certain direction, what information do we need to do that? And then what is there research that we want them to do? What community engagement, polling, that sort of thing, like we did with the bond. Might we want them to engage in to help inform us before we make any sort of decision. So in other words, tonight we're certainly not making any decisions, but we're just kind of giving staff feedback, like where do you want to know more? What do you want to know more about? so you can make an informed decision. Councilor White.
Thank you. I feel that I need information because voters ask questions and want to know why. And the one that's in my head right now is, how did we get here? Why are we in the position that we're in? I know they're asking that. And so information for me to be able to communicate with constituents about, you know, where we are and where we're going and what not making hard decisions is going to lead to, you know, who's going to lose a job if we don't do something. And how much does public safety need? You know, just things like that that would help me to communicate.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Appreciate that.
And Josh, just to be clear, so in this anticipated potential deficit, is this correct that like 2/3 of that is a result of our homeless programs? I mean, that's what it looks like on page 3.
So the homeless, the unsheltered programs are actually in addition to the deficit. So the deficit's 15 million. With the homeless programs, you're looking at more like 25 million.
So if we
they're not in the general fund, they're
Right.
being funded with one-time federal and state funding.
Well, I would certainly like to collect more information from the public and also our budget committee. We have a lot of dedicated members of the public who pore over these budgetary documents and they have a lot of questions. So I would like to get their input on our revenue options. I know that the Sustainable Revenues Task Force included in the past some key members of Budget Committee, as well as members of council. So I think it makes sense to invite them back into the conversation on something as important as this. When I look at these options based on what I have before me and my years on Budget Committee, which predate my time on council, I see the local option levy and the operations fee as the two that make the most sense for revenue options. I think everyone has done a good job of identifying the challenges with the payroll tax. For me, I see over and over again from the annual survey and from the people who talk to me on the community, who engage with me all the time on every social media platform you can think of, they want us to continue to make addressing homelessness a priority. Those services aren't cheap. We all know that, but the public's been very clear and very consistent on that. So I would love to see a levy option that includes homelessness related services and other forms of public safety. Because to me, homelessness is a crisis that is a public safety crisis. It's a public health crisis. And those two overlap. And more often than not, it's our public safety people who are responding to the homeless individuals on the street anyway, more so than any other type of city employee. So those are the positions that I have at this moment, but we're not making any decisions tonight, as Mayor Boyce said. But if you want to hear what my impressions are from listening to you, Josh, and all of our Moss Adams individuals, you know, all the collective expertise in the room, thank you for that. That's my impression based on this evening alone, and I look forward to.
So thank you, Councilor. My thoughts are, I would like to hear and see some scenarios addressing just the basic deficit, and then also with the homelessness on top of that as well. So kind of two different scenarios, like where we're solving the base problem, and then also solving, which I now consider part of our base problem, which is our homeless crisis. So I would like to see scenarios that address both of those things. And because right now we're, even just a minute ago, I think there was still a little bit of confusion about, oh, we're not talking about homelessness here. Wait a minute. So I think that we need to start folding that into our language and making sure that we're really clear about when we're talking about structural problems, what we mean, just so everybody's on the same page. I, like Councilor Nordyke, I would like to see a combination of operations fee and local option levy. I guess I'm not yet convinced that the payroll tax is ready for prime time as much as I would like it, because I love the idea of people who are using the services, who don't necessarily live here, but who work here. I love the idea of them helping to pay for them. And plus it spreads it, I think, on a different population that I think would be really helpful, but I'm not convinced yet that it's ready for that. I mean, unless you can provide Josh information in the future that shows that this is something that's really doable. I'm not sure that I'm convinced that it is. So at this point, I'm focusing on the operations fee and the levy, but I'm open-minded about the payroll tax. But you would have to give me some more information that shows that it is actually doable. So just to reiterate, solving both of the problems, just the basic general fund structural deficit, also the homelessness problem, using those two different scenarios. And I do think that to inform us on where we need to go, we do need to do some focus groups and get some feedback. I mean, I'm interested to know how voters are feeling given the fact that we just passed a $300 million bond. Like, are they done with paying for taxes, new taxes at this point? Or is there an appetite for it? You know, I would like some feedback. And I think those focus groups can help us with that because, yeah, those are my thoughts so far. I
don't know if I can't see who's in the room very well right now. I agree with Mayor Hoy on all the things that he requested. Thanks everybody for sharing their thoughts. A lot of this would be like the feasibility, like if we do approve the operations fee increase this year, is the soonest it could be made to like collect revenue next year, the next calendar year, and just kind of the feasibility, not just on that, but of all of them, with like the realistic timeline of we agree to take something out to the voters. What does it take to get, you know, the appropriate level of community feedback and buy-in to be successful if we do refer it to the voters? I'm very curious at gaming out the scenarios, including the homeless services, but I also want to look at like doing those aspirational things like hiring a few more police, moving closer to Chief Womack's community policing model that they've got with their strategic plan, and getting a new fire facility. Like we've got bond funds to build out a new fire station. What does it cost to staff that, and how could we incorporate that moving forward?
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Stapleton, then I'll get to you, Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear from you all. I came in thinking that the payroll tax was going to be too much, and the levy was kind of the way to go. Although I had concerns about compression previously. And being here tonight has kind of flipped me around. I am really concerned about compression. Again, it feels like something that I really don't want to go down that path. So for me, the payroll tax is looking better because of that issue, and framing it in a way for public safety, I think is a really good way to help explain something complicated and new in a way that kind of links it to something that people are really interested in getting more funding for. I am also fine looking at the other options as far as the utility fee, that we're calling it, yes. Operations fee. And I am really concerned. You all know that I'm really concerned about transportation in general. And so, like the Finance Committee said, looking at any other ways that folks are doing creative ways of finding funding for that, or looking at the gas tax in the future. I would love to see a timeline for what the city is thinking, how, if we're doing a combination of things, how would that roll out and what would that look like? And again, talking to those focus groups and finding out what people are interested in. I am too really concerned about folks, passing the bond and then us coming right back and asking for more is going to be interesting to hear people's feedback. I know that it's very different when we're talking about bonds, we're talking about things, and when we're talking about these, we're talking about people and services. So trying to communicate that the best we can. And then I again agree with Councilor Hoy when we're talking about how do we as councilors armed with data and information so that we can really accurately and together collectively all communicate the same thing to folks out at our neighborhood meetings and community groups is going to be really important as we move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. I think that one thing that I keep thinking about in keeping the public things palatable for the public is looking at basically two things, one that would not require going to the voters and one that would. So something that council can implement and something that voters would hopefully agree to. And so some of the questions that Josh was asking is, our input. And I would really like to see if we could say, and again, I'll use the ones that most of us have already sort of brought forward, the operations fee and a levy. Like if we had those two options, with one of them not needing to go to the voters, what kind of costs or what would the rate be for the operations fee and for the levy to get us to where we need to be and keep us going? It would be really helpful to kind of see what that means to each person or each household, the increase that that would take. So I hope I made myself clear.
You did. Thank you, Councilor. Other questions? Councilor Gonzalez.
Yeah, when I think of these things, I don't think of myself because these expenses I won't even notice on these. I wouldn't.
It must be nice.
Yeah, I mean, just to be honest, in the sense that a cup of coffee too, it's right there. But there's already families today that can't afford that. I still remember the day. I mean, sometimes even when I buy a coffee at $5, I still have this weird feeling that I had when I couldn't afford it. It was a luxury factor not too long ago. So it still sort of feels funny to buy. Every time I buy a cup of coffee, it feels like that. So I know a lot of families are already in the negative. The staff report to this finance committee assumed a recession this year. So the staff is saying we are going into a recession. Rent's gone up anywhere from 0% to 15%. Utility bills, everybody's noticed their, sure they've noticed their utility bills, especially through this cold winter and risen. Food costs, in addition to gas. I mean, luckily it's a little down. So there's already X amount of people in Salem that are cost of living already. So that's what I'm thinking about. That's what my concern is. So how do we balance that? The city operations fee, I mean, everybody's using it. It's going to pay for it. So at least everybody's going to pay, opening the door for next year to have it tiered, a plan, maybe to have some of these bigger businesses, just sort of pay their fair share. And the option levy, what I like about that is it brings in the communities to vote on it. If the community wants it, then they get it. So that's what I like about Councilor Nishioka said the same thing. Just something that we could do here and something that the public could vote on. So I like that.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other thoughts?
I have one.
Yep.
And reaching backwards just a little bit, you guys worked really hard on these benchmarking and relating us to peer cities. I feel like we've kind of gone away from that a little bit. Is there something we're supposed to be thinking about when it comes to that? Are we lacking in staff? Are we underpaying people? Those kinds of things. I find myself just thinking about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if we think about the service enhancements piece, I think that's a really important place where when we compare Salem to other full service cities, you would need to enhance services to be meeting your peers. In particular, in those internal service functions, which always lag behind public services when we tend to add staff. Just because it's easier, right? It's easier to add a police officer than it is to say we need someone in IT, but without the people in IT to run the systems and man those body cams, then it's not going to work, right? So it's making sure that we balance those needs and try to catch up so that you can continue to provide service to the city, but also if you wanted to increase, really be able to manage that.
So as we move forward, can this come back? Can this be part of that? So we can see that in this picture too,
So I guess in what format would you like to see it? I mean,
Well, that's a really good question. I don't have a format in mind. I just don't want to forget about this piece because I get really passionate about, public safety. And I get really passionate about the people, who are uncomfortable with the payroll tax and whatever, but I want to be representing the whole situation. I guess I'm saying the same thing I said before, to be informed and be able to bring that.
Yeah, one thing that might be helpful, I sent out on Friday was kind of a short couple paragraphs by department. Some of it was data driven, some of it was anecdotal, but kind of the current status. And the thing I think we're challenged with is even if we address the deficit and the homeless programs, I mean, we're still in the same staffing situation, right? It doesn't address any of the deferred needs. It doesn't add any cops on the street. It doesn't add any fire response. So I'm hopeful that where the council lands for revenue options include some level of at least baseline increases or allows for baseline increases over time.
I think what I'm hearing, Josh, and I might be wrong, Counselor, again, feel free to correct me if I am, but I think that one of the things that I'm hearing people wanting is to know, like, okay, what if we choose not to do these things? We've talked about what the deficit is, but what does that mean in terms of services? We haven't, because these are hard conversations. Nobody wants to raise taxes, right? I mean, it's painful to even talk about it. But it's even more painful to do layoffs if you get into that conversation. So I think it's really important that we help paint that picture. Like, okay, what is doing nothing? What does that look like? What are those conversations are we having? Where are we closing the library? Are we closing a fire station or 2 or 3? Are we laying off how many police officers? Or what is it, what are the ramifications of doing nothing? I think that's an important picture to paint, because I think that it's important to remember that a lot of our counselors haven't been through very many budget cycles yet, if any. So they don't have the context for what does it mean to do nothing? And these are hard conversations. Trust me, folks, it's even harder to have the layoff talk and figure out which services we're going to cut. Like, are we going to close the library 3 days a week? That's not a conversation I want to have. But those are the realities. So what I think it's important to, when we're painting these pictures, what does doing nothing mean? Because that's a question we're going to be asked. Why does the city need to do this? Well, the other option is that we're going to be doing this. We lived through days when we only had 1 fire station in West Salem. That's not a fun scenario.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, just for equivalencies, right? So to address just the deficit, I mean, you're talking about the entire Parks and Recreation program plus all the days at the library. I mean, just to address that deficit. I mean, we're not talking a couple days.
Right. I think it's important for you to paint that picture for us in writing so we have an idea of what that really means.
Sure. Yeah, happy to.
Because it's easy to talk in theory, like, oh, well, do we really want to do this? Man, no, not really. But okay, well, that means that we're going to have this conversation then, which means what are we going to cut? So, other thoughts? Yeah.
I just think there's an opportunity to continue this conversation, particularly around the meaning of baseline and addressing the homeless response in baseline. What does that mean? So I hope that we have an opportunity to come back to this conversation soon, because I don't think we're done tonight. Your questions about the ramifications of doing nothing, we've had those conversations at a staff level. We know what that means. We certainly were reluctant to put that on the table this evening, but as Josh just said, it's significant. And as my comments when we started, it's painful. I mean, it really is. We're talking about people. Almost 100% of that reduction is people, and that would be felt both in the organization and externally. So I hope we can come back and continue the conversation about what the baseline looks like, what the options are from a revenue perspective with a operations fee and with a levy of some sort, and we can start zeroing in on where we want to go with this. Does that sound like good next steps?
It does sound good to me. What do you all think? Josh, do you feel like you have the direction you need?
I do, yes, thank you.
Okay. Online, are you good? Councilor Barney had to leave us, unfortunately. You guys are, see yes, thumbs up from Phillips and Nishioka. Is there anything else we need to talk about tonight? So, Mr. Staley, when you say come back soon, you're talking maybe next month or the month after at the latest?
Next month at the latest.
Next month.
Honestly, we need to bring this conversation to something approaching a conclusion that we can move forward with from a budget perspective. Right.
I agree with doing that soon, but that time will also precede our budget committee talks. So I don't know how we solicit input from budget committee members while following all of our public meetings and notification rules, but I really want to get input from our public budget committee. You know, they're a creature statute. They're there to provide public input on our budget. So I would love to find a way for us to get their input on this really important conversation we had.
I think what I'm suggesting is that we have another work session where we can continue to refine what input into this budget process so that we have a proposal to bring forward to the budget committee in April.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, thank you, everybody. We're adjourned. That's loud. Okay, for the-
On the mic.